Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I do want to talk about upcoming launch games for the Nintendo Switch 2, but before I do that, I do want to give a massive Merry Christmas to everyone. I am recording this the day after Christmas, the 26th of December, so I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, then I hope you at the very least had a wonderful holiday season. And in addition to that, I do want to give another massive thank you to those who watched and liked and supported my previous video regarding the Nintendo Switch 2. My previous Nintendo Switch 2 video did extremely well, so I'm very thankful for the support that video got. So once again, thank you to all those who watched the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and stick around for more because there's going to be some good stuff coming up. I'm just on vacation right now, so that's the reason why I haven't been making as many videos lately. But once the new year hits, then there will be some good stuff coming, so I hope you guys can tune in for that. So let's talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 and its launch games, because I want to focus this video more so on the launch games, because, well, the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't announced yet, right? But we do have some ideas of what the console could potentially launch with, because the last thing Nintendo wants is another Wii U situation, right? Where we're launching with very limited content, not really limited content, but as far as Nintendo first party, as far as the big heavy hitter titles are concerned, they were not as present. And so when we look at the past regarding Nintendo consoles, we can see that the Switch also kind of launched. You could say the Switch launched with a weak lineup. You could make that argument, but with Breath of the Wild alone, that really made up for it. So all it is just that one big heavy hitter title. And so we've seen this in the past as well. The Wii had Twilight Princess, Zelda Twilight Princess launch with it back in 2006. So Nintendo are not strangers to launching their consoles with big heavy hitter games. But if you remember the Wii U era, and even the 3DS launched with a very minimal lineup, with I think the quote-unquote the biggest Nintendo first-party release at launch was Pilot Wings Resort, which was actually a pretty fun game, I'm not gonna lie. I bought my 3DS, not day one, day two. I bought it day two, and I bought Pilot Wings with it, and it was amazing. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed it, but let's be real. It wasn't a very big game. It wasn't the heavy hitter that the system needed. And so there were a lot of different things that caused the 3DS to falter at the beginning of 's lifespan, beyond just with the weak lineup. But that's a different video for a different time. Maybe I'll make that, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, the Wii U and the 3DS had really weak launch lineups that resulted in really weak sales, really weak launch. And so when we look at New Super Mario Bros. U, for example, it wasn't necessarily Nintendo's fault for not knowing that game wasn't going to be a system seller, considering that the previous games in the series sold very well, but it mainly sold well due to its longevity, not necessarily that like a big burst of sales at the beginning. It was more so it was a build up over the course of a number of years that it got to that point. But also, it just, at that point, the formula was getting stale, right? It wasn't as fresh, let's say, as Breath of the Wild. Up until the release of New Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Super Mario Bros. U was, in my opinion, the best new Super Mario Bros. Game. But it just wasn't enough to lift the launch sales of a brand new console. It just wasn't enough. So let's talk about the games that would potentially be enough. So, first up, let's talk about some first-party Nintendo Switch 2 launch games. What could potentially launch from Nintendo themselves during the first day the system comes out? I'm not talking about a few months later, but like what could launch day and date with the console? Well, what about a 1-2 Switch style game? What about a Nintendo Switch Sports style game? What about just any kind of game that would showcase the unique features of the console? People want to say gimmicks, you can say gimmicks. I'll say gimmick with quotation marks because I don't believe they're necessarily gimmicks at this point, but it's very likely that the system will launch with a game that showcases what it can do, not necessarily in terms of hardware, but in terms of just the general features of the system. So yeah, A 1-2 switch style game, in my opinion, is very likely to launch with this system. But because we don't know much regarding the system's unique features, other than it most likely will be another hybrid system, there's not much to go off of. But let's just say they still come out with Joy-Cons, like the Joy-Con 2.0s or whatever. And so these are much more upgraded Joy-Cons. They have better HD rumble and all of that. Well, there's potential that they could showcase all of that. The more advanced Joy-Con technology, for example. Or let's say the system launches with a dual screen. This theoretical game could showcase what that second screen can do. So yeah, that's my first prediction. A 1-2 switch style or Nintendo Switch Sports style kind of game. Some kind of casual game to get that initial casual audience in on the console. And to showcase the unique features. What's next? Well, what I think is arguably the most likely big AAA first-party launch from Nintendo, launching day and date with the Switch 2, a brand new 3D Mario game. Yes, I do believe that we are finally going to get the next 3D Mario game after Odyssey, after 7 years. One of the biggest gaps, if not the biggest gap, hard to say, but one of the biggest gaps between 3D Mario releases ever. I think that we're going to get the next 3D one next year, and it will launch day and date with the console. That is my opinion. Now, will this 3D Mario game be open world? Will it be linear? Or will it be a sandbox game like Odyssey? Well, hard to say, but I personally think that we are most likely looking at a open world 3D Mario game. When you look at Bowser's Fury, you see that Nintendo is potentially paving a road here. They're testing the waters, so to speak. No pun intended, considering that game has a lot of water in it, but they are testing the waters, and I think they see potential in this formula, and I think the people who played it have seen the potential as well. So I do think the next 3D Mario game will be an open world game, potentially expanding upon the ideas presented in Bowser's Fury. So what's next? What's after that? Could we see a Zelda game? Could we see a Zelda game launching with the Switch 2? Personally, I don't believe so. I don't think we're going to see a Zelda game at launch. Maybe in the next few months, we could see a 2D Zelda game, 2D remake, or even the rumored 3D remake. I'm not sure, to be very honest and upfront. I have no idea where these rumors are coming from, but there is this persistent rumor as of late that an Ocarina of Time 3D remake is in the works, so potentially we could be seeing that the first Zelda game for this new console is a remake of Ocarina of Time. So there's also that potential. But personally, I think it is unlikely that we're going to see a Zelda game 2D or 3D at the launch of this system. And of course, the ever-elusive Metroid Prime 4, one of my most anticipated games ever. I've been waiting for this game for 10 years. It's still not out. I don't know when it's going to be out, but personally, I'm hedging my bets on next year. I do think that Metroid Prime 4 is finally going to be shown and released next year. And I think very likely it will be shown alongside whenever the Switch 2 is revealed for the first time. Somewhere around that window. We're going to see it running on that new console, and I think there is big potential that Metroid Prime 4 could be a launch game for this system. Firstly, Metroid games, you'd be forgiven to believe that this was a terrible idea, considering Metroid games typically don't do too well sales-wise. But when you look at the ceiling of Zelda sales before Breath of the Wild came out, you were looking at about 6 million for Twilight Princess, the best-selling Zelda game of all time. And that launched on the Wii. So, fast forward to 2017, Breath of the Wild comes out on the Switch. It does amazingly well, brand new breath of fresh air for the franchise. It did extremely well, sold about, at this point, about 30 million units, best-selling Zelda game. Potentially, we could see the same for Metroid Prime 4, a series that typically has had its ceiling on 2 to 3 million sales per game. Maybe it could be double that. If you were to launch it with a new system, maybe it'll double that, especially if it's critically acclaimed. If it's an amazing game, it showcases the hardware really well, which is one of the things as well that I want to talk about too, is Metroid Prime 4 can potentially be a visual showcase for what the Switch can do on a graphical level, on a visual level. can show what the system can do. So I think it has potential in that regard. I don't know if I want to place money on it. I still think a 1-2 Switch style game or a 3D Mario is significantly more likely than Metroid Prime 4. But if I had to place my bets, I would say Metroid Prime 4 is probably going to be a game that comes out within the first few months of the console's release. But is there a chance it can be a launch game? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. Okay, what about third-party games? Well, we've seen the Wii U may not have had the biggest first-party lineups, but it had some killer first-party games at launch, one of them being Zombie U, a completely new game built from the ground up by Ubisoft, of all companies, for the Wii U, exclusively for the Wii U at launch. Can we see something like that again? Some ambitious third-party ports brought over to the Nintendo Switch 2, or just third-party games built specifically for the system? Well, we've seen different things. We've seen not necessarily rumors, but things that people have said. It's possible that certain games that were announced at the Game Awards could potentially find their way to the Nintendo Switch 2. It's very likely. It's hard to say what these games are going to be. Grand Theft Auto 6 it's not going to be a launch game, considering I do believe that the Switch 2 will come out next year, and GTA 6 isn't coming out until 2025 at the very minimum, so that's already crossed off. But there's other games as well that were announced during that show that I think has a solid chance of being a launch game, if not a game that comes out in the first few months of the console's release. So yeah, guys, those are just my brief thoughts at what I think could potentially come to the Switch 2 at launch. I want to hear what you guys think. What do you guys think will come out at launch? Do you agree with me? Do you think the 1-2 Switch style game or a 3D Mario is the most likely? Or do you think it is very possible that we could get a Zelda 3D remake or a 2D Zelda game at launch? What do you guys think? Let me know below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.